A very warm welcome to this World Game Changers podcast, where your host, Paul D. Lowe, embraces many crucial conversations that compassionately contribute towards creating a better life and world. Paul's intention's very simple: to help get people's inspirational insights and motivational messages out into the world, so others may benefit.
Hello listeners, and welcome back to this World Game Changers podcast episode. Today I'm joined by a returning guest, a very, very dear friend of mine, and I don't say that lightly, a very dear friend of mine, Ravi Nair from Mumbai in India. Ravi, a very warm welcome back to you, sir.
Hi Paul, as always, a pleasure to be back with you. And like I say, I don't know whether we should also call it a podcast, because every time we chat, I think if recorded, it's going to become a podcast series for people.
Absolutely.
It is a pleasure being here, Paul.
Okay, my friend. Thank you. So, listeners, what we thought we'd talk about, Ravi and I, was success and the soulful leader. Now, there's just a few words in that, Ravi. Success and the soulful leader. But I know that within, sort of 10, 15 minutes, we're in for a very, very weird and wonderful conversation. Start us off, Ravi, if you will.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. In fact, before I even get into success, I'm going to tell you about a wonderful meeting which I had just 2 days back. So I met an official who's a global ambassador for NASA. Okay, and he is a guy who has launched close to 700 people in the space. Amazing guy. And I'm going to give you a glimpse of what he spoke, and it really touched me a lot because it resonated with me. And while we're talking about the violence and hatred and the negative energy which is floating around this globe today, like a war which is happening and all, he told me, Ravi, most of you guys get to witness one sunrise and one sunset in a day. But an astronaut gets to see about 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets in one day. Because the space station, they transit in the orbit at a speed of 24,000 kilometers per hour. So that is the kind of experience they have. And he said, sitting up there in the space, they monitor a lot of things like earthquakes, tsunamis, rain, and a lot of other things which helps humanity. Now, a very important part why I'm mentioning this today is they don't really differentiate between any countries, borders, caste, religion, anything. For them, when they are in space, the Earth is just like one ball, which has life on it. And they do everything they can to preserve this ball and the life on the planet. So while sitting with him, I could resonate a soulful leader with an astronaut, because a soulful leader, I would say, is a universal citizen who does not care about borders, about color, about gender, age, ability, or disability. And it rightfully, if you see, has been conceived from World Game Changers. Because the whole ideology of soulful leaders comes from WGC, World Game Changers. Because you can only change the world when you have this kind of ideology. When you're not stuck with boundaries and colors and creed and like that. So this is something I just want to share, because I just met this gentleman. And I was really touched by what he said. Look at it. Like, an astronaut doesn't care. They're just up there, spending whatever time in the space, going through all the challenges, just to preserve Earth.
What a great analogy. What a great elevated analogy. Yeah. And isn't it true, Ravi, that, the most powerful things in life are the most simple things? What you've said there come across really clear, really simple. I didn't have to rack my brains listening to think, what is he talking about? I don't really get what he's talking about. It was so simple and clear and powerful.
Absolutely. And in fact, we were discussing success yesterday, and it was like, he's like 40 years in NASA. And that's a new definition of success also, which appealed to me. And what comes out for us, like as a soulful leader, was if you're doing something, I asked him this question: what keeps him going? For 40 years, he has been NASA doing research or doing whatever it is. It's not easy. So, and this is what came out of the whole discussion, that if you are doing something today in your life out of your own choice, then you can consider yourself successful. For example, if you are a homemaker, and if it is by choice, not because you are forced by people or circumstances to become a homemaker, then you are successful. Like, for example, if you are a salesman and if you're doing it by choice, you are successful, irrespective of whether you are achieving very high targets or not, doesn't matter. But every day you breathe success because you're doing something you love. Like, take your example, Paul. If you are podcasting today, you're doing it by choice because you love doing it. You love sharing knowledge and wisdom with the world. And that is why I would say you're a successful podcast. I don't give, I'm not interested in knowing how many views it gets, how many people listen to it. For me, you are a successful podcaster. Besides the multiple hats you don, like, the CEO of World Game Changers, being a mentor to the footballers, being a coach to entrepreneurs. And if you see, all of them is coming by choice, Paul. None of these roles you're playing is coming, it's like, you're forced into it. You're just doing it by choice. That is why, I don't know, I think you work 24 hours in 24 hours. But I always see you smiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I would say, Paul. Like, if you're doing something in your life today, whatever you're doing, and if it is by choice, does not matter how big or how small it is, I would say you are a soulful leader. Because when you do something by choice, your heart and soul are involved in whatever you're doing, which means you are experiencing success almost every day doing whatever you're doing.
It's that, what struck me as you were saying that, Ravi, was it's that simplicity, yes, yet again, isn't it? I mean, I don't think about what I do. I'm just immersed in it. I love it. It just seems natural. To me, it's just as natural as cleaning my teeth or, I don't know, having a wash in the morning, having breakfast. It's just life. It's what we do. And it just becomes so simple. This word simplicity, I don't want to detract away from the theme of success that we're talking about, Ravi, but I don't know what it is with me just over these last few days, but this word simplicity is really, really anchoring in my world, really anchoring. Don't know if there's any connection.
Yeah, in fact, look at this. Why is it simple? Because for you, success, Paul, today, like for you and me and for everybody at WTC, success is an experience. It is not an end outcome for all of us. We are looking at the experience. If I'm doing something with Paul today, how is that experience going to be? I don't know what is the end result. I don't care about the end result. So my whole focus is, how is this experience? If I'm going to do some project with you for next 3 months, I'm going to ask one thing. How is 3 months going to be with Paul? What are we going to evolve as? What is Paul and I going to be at the end of 3 months? What we achieve is different. And so I think that is the whole thing about success. And another perspective which I would like to share about success is, if you are a successful person, I mean, this is my personal thing, that I feel you inherently have to be a very patient person. Now, I'll ask you a question, Paul, here. Suppose you come across someone who is absolutely filthy rich, it's like rich out of the roof. But you find him absolutely impatient with himself. You find him absolutely impatient with his own family members and relatives, with strangers whom he meets, people whom he doesn't know. And you also find him angry with God, or impatient with God. Would you actually rate him successful?
No, because, I mean, hopefully this doesn't come across as judgmental, listeners, but in my humble opinion, there is far, far, far too much emphasis put on the world, this definition of wealth in financial terms, because he or she is rich, that makes them successful. No, it doesn't. I am not a multi-millionaire, but I'm a multi-trillionaire in terms of the quality of my life. The love I have for people, for humanity, that reciprocates the space I find myself in, the simplicity of my life, singing songs to myself. That makes me a multi-trillionaire.
Brilliant. Absolutely. So in fact, I just thought this is something which came to my mind. Success has a lot to do with patience. And when I say patience, I'll share basically 4 dimensions of patience. So this is how it works, Paul. If you are patient with yourself, your own self, you are confident. Which means when things are not working out the way you want them to work and you show patience with yourself, it actually reflects your confidence, right? And that is what happened. Think about this. You are working in a team and things are not going the way it is supposed to go. And everybody is chaotic, everybody is upset. But you are showing patience with yourself. You're not losing it. Now, suddenly, people start looking at you as a successful person. Oh, look at this guy, right? The second dimension of patience is when you start showing patience with people who are very close to you. Like it could be your close employee, a close team member, or even a family member. And if he or she messes up or does some mistake, and you show patience with that person, that is called as love. The third dimension of patience is when you show it with people who are not close to you, like you don't know them very well, they are just an acquaintance, or you are just professionally connected for whatever reasons. And when you show patience with such people, you reflect respect. And finally, the fourth dimension, that is when you show patience with God, when things are completely haywire and nothing seems to work at all, that is called as faith. Now, the reason I was sharing this four dimension is because I'll just repeat the four dimension. That is, which it stems from patience. That is confidence, love, respect, and faith. So let me put it in this way, Paul. A soulful leader is not someone who sits on a chair of a CEO or a director, but it is someone who sits on a chair which has four legs, and they are confidence, love, respect, and faith. And all these four stems from patience. So if you can practice, people can practice patience. I think you are there. We're talking about. So we're not talking about degrees or diploma in politics. If you have practice and you have the quality of patience within you, you are a successful, soulful leader. First of all, and then of course you're successful. So for me, if soulful leader is synonymous with patience. Patience with self, patience with people whom you love, people whom you don't, whom you are not close to, and showing patience with God.
And that is the simplicity of it all yet again, isn't it? To bring that word back in, rather the simplicity
absolutely, of it. Paul. And that absolutely, you made it, you summed it up, because leadership is not so complicated. That is what most people think. When they given leadership positions or leadership, they think it's complicated. Something they have to do something different. No, they don't have to do anything different. They just have to inhibit this one quality of patience, and they are there.
Superb. I want to offer a couple of things as we close this this brief but powerful conversation out, Ravi. But before I do that, to close things out, I just want to invite you in, if I may, to share your own contact details, because you do some absolutely amazing stuff. And I speak firsthand. We're involved in developing soulful leaders. That is my absolute honour and privilege. But I know you do so much more. How can people reach out to you, Ravi, find out more about you, connect with you?
Okay, Paul. So the best way to contact me would be to go to the World Game Changers website, and you will find me on the website and my contact details also. The reason I recommend that is because besides me, you'll get to meet a lot of other wonderful people at WGC and the work we do. You could also write to me at ravi.nair@worldgamechangers.org. Okay. And I'll get back to you in less than 48 hours. That's a promise. Thank you.
Superb. So the two things then, Ravi, that I wanted to close with. One is what I always close with, so hold that thought for a moment. But the one before that is, obviously we've spoken around leadership here, soulful leadership. And I don't know, Ravi, we've never actually spoken about this, but certainly in the UK we have a saying, leadership is a lonely place. Well, I want to challenge that. Leadership is a lonely place, because my challenge on that is, by a very, very little tweak, we can give a whole new different perspective. So let's have a look at that word lonely. 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 If we change one letter, the N, and put a V in there, then all of a sudden that one little change that we can make in our life means that leadership becomes a lovely place. And I just offer that as a thought.
That's brilliant, Paul. Absolutely. And I think most of the times people think it is lonely because they feel the only way to go to the top is alone. Nobody thinks of taking their team along with them. And soulful leadership is absolutely about combinatorship. So I think anybody who goes through our training of soulful leadership, they definitely will experience being lovely at the top and not lonely.
So the final thing, listeners, I want to close out with is the way I always do, by saying, remember, the world's changing. How will you respond?
Thanks very much for listening to this World Game Changers podcast episode. Hopefully you found it interesting and helpful. Drop a line to paul@worldgamechangers.org with any thoughts or questions you may have, and he'll be more than happy to respond. Remember, the world is changing. How will you respond?